Can you travel to Croatia with diabetes? You sure can. There's a lot to explore in Croatia, from historic Roman ruins, delightful little towns, and of course the famous cities of the Adriatic Sea coast, like Dubrovnik and Split. And there's the food, whatever type you want, and always delicious. Be smart and be careful, and diabetes won't stop you. Hi, I'm still Jeremy. Here's my personal blood sugar report from 18 days in Croatia. On this long European trip, we actually went to Croatia twice, first entering from Slovenia and visiting several towns. Then, after spending time in some other countries, we entered Croatia again from the south to see Dubrovnik. Over all 18 days in Croatia, I checked my blood sugar 78 times, the range being from 48 to 422, and the average being 171. As a sign of how my blood sugar control got better in general, the average of the first visit was 177, and the second, 153. My memories of traveling through Croatia have nothing to do with blood sugars, really. It was the old buildings and the ancient alleyways and the sense of contentment among the people and other locals that made it so magical. Here, as much as anywhere, diabetes was merely something to deal with along the way. Obviously, the blood sugars were far from perfect, but what I hope to communicate to you is that working at it and paying attention and doing your best is all you can do. You'll keep learning and improving, which will allow you to enjoy all the wonderful corners of Croatia and their endless surprises. Here are some stories about diabetic victories I had in Croatia, some mistakes I made, and other things I encountered and had to deal with, and why it was all more than worth it. Things got off to a pretty good start. In the first stop, the capital city of Zagreb, for nearly 24 hours all of my readings were less than 200. If you watched my other videos, you'll know that that's been pretty unusual for me on this trip. Unfortunately, as interesting as Christmas Eve in Zagreb is, ho 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 to you too, I was blasted by a 297 in the afternoon, and then another one that evening. But between those two twin towers of bad blood sugar, it was a good day in Croatia. A brownie, some record shopping, and ice skating, all of which combined to make me 79 on the ice and tucked into a Snickers bar. Like life itself, diabetes can be rough going, but if you keep trying, you'll start to get the hang of it. I'm kind of doing it. Overall, if that's a day, I'll take it. By the way, I stopped into a pharmacy in Zagreb to get some more thyroid pills, and while I didn't have a prescription, the pharmacist saw my need and told me she'd make an exception for me. It bolsters my theory that, medically, things tend to work out when you're traveling, somehow. Christmas Day itself went much smoother, with each reading being better than the one before. And this despite me having to calculate an insulin dose for the dinner back in the apartment we were staying in. According to Google Translate, the food was a package of girl pancakes with ham and orphans. They didn't tell me how to count those carbs in diabetes school. It all worked out, though. Let's not talk about the first reading the day after Christmas, though. My first 300 in Croatia. We're walking down the street in Varaždin, Croatia. It's been snowing here probably all day and most of this morning.
And right now?
And right now it's still blowing and snowing and it's stinging our faces and our eyes. One of my main memories from Croatia is that it's a great place to just wander around. There are countless interesting little towns and a good train and bus network between them. You can even rent a car and get to more places. Walking around the northeastern town of Osijek, with its interesting figures, the big smooth Drava River, the friendly local residents, and bright sunny sky at odds with the 90s era bullet holes still in its walls, I felt like the exercise would be good for my blood sugars. It may have been, but despite my careful calculations, for example, this picnic lunch included this dessert that showed 59 grams of carbs per 100 grams of chocolate bar, and this bar was 50 grams, so about 30 grams of carbs. And my scenic Humalog shot, I was 265 afterwards. A rare dinner of McDonald's didn't help things either. Food is as important as exercise and insulin. The good news is that it's easy to find good food in Croatia. Other meals there included some tasty pizza, some more nuanced and authentic Italian food, especially on the coast, which is just a boat ride away from Italy, and local stuff that is heavy with bread and meat. And as usual, the big breakfasts that were usually served in our hotels and guest houses. Things were usually easier to handle with the more quality foods, which is why my Croatian blood sugar average was better than in other recent countries where I had more junk food. It was up in the 200s a lot, but at least as often it was down in the 100s or even lower. So I had a reasonable diabetic backdrop against which I could explore Croatia and its many moods. On this day, cold and blizzardy, I was loving this. Who wouldn't? Actually, the chilliness of Croatian winter makes it easier to travel with insulin in your bag. Not much cooling needed when everything's frozen over. And if you get low, you can eat some snow. It doesn't help, but you can do it. Or you can even take a super scenic shot in the snow and eat a tasty corny big, which is closer to human food. If you're going to eat a gigantic hamburger and watch Koyaanisqatsi back in your room in Varaždin though, realize that the giant hamburger probably has more carbs than you think. It was on New Year's Eve that I had the worst diabetic moment of the whole Croatian trip. After about 48 hours of acceptable, even too low readings, in the town of Pula, enjoying the frigid but sunny weather, the amazing and little-known Roman amphitheater ruins, and meeting more locals, I was suddenly 286 before dinner. I took some corrective insulin and then more insulin for dinner, and at 11 p.m. my last blood sugar check of the year was the dreaded 422. Stunned, but knowing it was true, I took some Humalog to get it down. And then we went out to see the New Year's Eve festivities in the Pula town square. Why not? Things go wrong, but you have to live your life. The mood was merry, and I'm glad we went. To better readings in the new year. Happy New Year! And in fact, the first reading of the new year was much better. The second, not so good. So it's going to be one of those years. Again. Oh well, as I say in every single video, if readings are going to dart up and down, they might as well do it here. The rest of the time in Croatia wasn't that bad, as we spent days wandering the unbelievable alleys and nooks and crannies of the town of Split on the gorgeous Adriatic coast. Fresh figs and seaside pizza slices might be hard to calculate insulin for, but you do your best. Personally, I noticed that my successes were getting more and more frequent, and I often had better news from my meter to match the excitement of the surroundings. That 422 must have made me focus even more on diabetic realities, and that's certainly positive. At one point, I even discovered the slow-mo feature of my camera and spent an entire afternoon down that rabbit hole. These are the sorts of things that are more enjoyable when you feel better. After a day of driving a rental car to Imotski to see the famous lake and dodging the hectic traffic of rural Croatia, I had one final spike in blood sugar and the next day went to Bosnia and Herzegovina. After a few weeks of circling around other Balkan countries, the last 4 days in Croatia, all in Dubrovnik, were excellent. Most of my readings were under 200, with the highest being 246. I only made one really stupid diabetes mistake in Dubrovnik. You see, my Croatian friend Jelena happened to be in Dubrovnik, and together we hiked up Mount Surge, which is a steep hill that rises from the coast. There are cable cars, but they weren't running this day. As we hiked up the hill, all we could do was watch the test cars going back and forth, mocking us, although I usually prefer the exercise anyway. I brought a bottle of juice and a Mars bar with me, only, but halfway up I needed the juice. On the top, with one of Croatia's most famous views behind me, I was only 101. But despite the museum, there was no shop to buy anything. I'd hoped for some juice or candy vendor or something. So worried to death that I would drop low after all the hiking and didn't have enough with me, but with no way to get more carbs if I needed them anyway, we started down the hill, and I had to just hope for the best. As it happened, we got back down the town and I was fine. But this is such a rookie mistake. Going hiking all day with woefully inadequate low blood sugar snacks? Man, they should take my diabetic license away. Always overpack for that. So all's well that ends well. The town of Dubrovnik is as nice as they say, and even when your readings aren't perfect, the laid-back vibes still are. Croatia is a great place to go, and despite being there almost 3 weeks, I feel I didn't see 1% of it. Best of all, my blood sugar readings got better and better, and hopefully you can always use the bad ones to learn something and improve in the future. Thanks for watching. As I mentioned, the next report will be from Bosnia and Herzegovina, where things were not quite as good diabetically as Croatia, but again there were a lot of positive signs. Check out my other videos for travel tips, stories from my own travels, and my experiences as a type 1 diabetic wanderer. See you on the road.